Hello, in this part 2 we will focus on implementing the conversion in the convert function. To recap, we now have the controller who is a delegate and a data source for both picker views. We created the units as a dictionary and the keys which represent the names as an array, and we made the array as both of them as a class variables. We initialized them in the view.did_load, and I sorted the array, the keys, and used the sort function with the sort keys, and explained that before in a previous video. And then here is the initialization of the different elements of the picker view, and now here is our convert function that will actually do the conversion. So let's take out the assistant editor and switch to my class. And here is the picker view. So what do we need to do in the convert function? Step number 1, we need to retrieve the amount from the text field. Step number 2, and you don't have to type the comments that I type. I just type the comments to help you understand what I am doing. Then the next step is to retrieve the unit that the user selected to convert from. Then step 3 is to retrieve the unit that the user selected to convert to. And then step number 4 is to apply the conversion, apply the two-step conversion. And step number 5 is to format the result as a string. And then step number 6 is to assign the result string to the label. Alright? So let's start with them one by one. And you will notice here that we're going to spend quite some time on converting from one type to the other. I mentioned in previous modules that while we know these steps, we have to work with the library, and the library has different types, and Swift is very strict on the type. So if you have something that's in text, you have to convert it explicitly to a float type, because a string type cannot be used in mathematical operation. And so you will see that we're going to be playing around in each one of those steps in order to get the actual value that we are looking for. So first, retrieving the amount from the text field. The user will type in the text field, and that will be in the attribute or the property called text, and that will be a type string. So if I have the text field as a property, I added the text field as a property to my class. So I can, in the convert function, say let the amount as a string. I'm creating a variable. I created a variable to hold whatever inside the text field. So I called it amount as a string, and I will assign to it whatever inside the text of the text field. The text property of the text field gives me back a string representing everything in the text field. Notice the question mark here, which means we have to add an exclamation mark at the end, like this. So now I got whatever the user entered, but it is of type string. The type string cannot be used in calculation, so I need to convert from type string to float. Swift programming language does not have a specific function that makes that conversion, but it provides you with a very powerful generic tool, so we're going to have to adjust to that a little bit. The first element is there is a class called NumberFormatter. So I can create an object called NumberFormatter. So let NumberFormatter equal NSNumberFormatter. The number formatter format text representation with numbers and makes a lot of conversions between the text representation of numeric values into number objects. So I get so I get myself an object. So I'm creating an object in the memory of this type number formatter because I'm gonna need that object. Using the number formatter, I can call on a function called number from a string. This function, you can pass a string to it, like the amount as a string, and it gives you back, unfortunately, the type NSNumber. I need a float, but let's grab that type, the NSNumber type, and then see if we can convert that to a float. And notice the question mark here again. So I'll pass the amount as a string to this function, add the exclamation point, and whatever this function is giving me, I'm gonna assign it to another variable called amount as number. I'm using this naming to tell you and to tell myself what is it exactly. This is the amount, but not in the type that I want. The type I want is float. So I am not there yet. I'm converting from one to the other. So I converted from the string to the number. Now I want to see if I can get a float from the number. And whatever that I'm going to put it here, that's my final amount. And maybe just I can say it amount as float, so that you know what it is. Amount as float, and I'm going to say this comes from the amount as number, and then dot, there is a function called float value in the number that can give you a float type. So that converts from the number formatter to the float type. So now I have the amount in the type I want. That's what I was after from the beginning. But I had the amount in a text field on the user interface, so I had to use an outlet to retrieve that, and I retrieved it first as a string. Then I wanted to convert that a string, so I needed an object called the number formatter who is excellent and knows how to make these conversions. So that converted the string to a number. Then from the number there is a function called float value, and I use that to get the amount as float that I want. So now I'm done with my very first item. So then let's go to the second. I need to retrieve the unit that the user converted from. Now the user will select the unit in the picker view, but the picker view only knows the row that the user selected. So the picker view can give you the index of the selected row. Well, I can take that index, use the keys array, and retrieve the actual name of the unit that the user selected. So first, I want to get the index of selected unit from, and then I'm going to use the picker view of the unit from, and then I will say, give me the selected row in component. The selected row in component give you a type int. The type int is a number, a non-decimal number, and it needs from you the row in which component, because remember the picker view can have more than one component, although in our case we only created it with one component. So we'll provide 0 because 0 is the index of the first component. Here is the function where we told the picker view you only have one component. So since it has one component, this will be the 0. Now that I got that, I can then get the unit from as a string, the unit from. So the unit from, I'm going to use that index with the keys array. So keys dot object at index, and use the index of selected unit from and convert that to a string. So now I have the unit itself as a string that the user has selected to convert it from. I need to repeat the same things to get the unit that the user selected to convert to. So first I'll say index of selected unit 2, and then I'm going to use the picker view that will convert to and say selected row in component and component 0. Then I will say let unit 2 equal go to the keys array and say, give me object at index of the selected unit 2, and I want this as type string. So I have the unit from, I have the unit to, I have the amount as float, so I can now apply the two-step conversion. The two-step conversion says you can use the unit from and the conversion factor associated with the unit from to convert the amount to inch. So I can get the conversion factor to inches. So I'll say let conversion factor to inch equal. The dictionary can give you the value. So I have the units as a dictionary, and I can say I want to get the value for key. The value for key function gives you back the actual value for the key that you want. So the key here is the name of the unit, because the name of the unit, I use the keys to represent the units. But this will come back as a type. I need to convert that type to a number, to a float type. So it can't convert directly. Yep, it needs the as. So now I have this, so I can get result as inches. So let result as inches equal the amount as float multiplied by the conversion factor to inch. So that's step 1. Then in step 2, I take the result as an inch with the conversion factor from inches to the unit that we want. So I say let conversion factor from inch equal units dot value for key. Now I need to get the conversion factor for the unit 2, the unit that the user wants to go to, and convert that back to float. So now I get the conversion factor. These conversion factors, I'm trying to retrieve this column. What I am doing here, I have this column, which is the unit, but I don't know which one the user selected. So that's why I'm grabbing the index and then figuring out which one the user selected. Then I'm using the dictionary itself to retrieve the value, which is this column, that corresponds to the unit from that column. So I first retrieve the value that corresponds to the unit from and multiply that by the amount. Then I retrieve the value that corresponds to the unit 2 and divide the amount by that conversion. So that's the conversion factor from inch, and then I will say let result equal the result as an inch, result as inch divided by conversion factor from inch. So this is step 1, and this is step 2. Then finally, I need to format the result as a string. We did that in module 2 when we formatted the value of the color component in a title. We used the localized string as format. So I will say here, let result as a string equal ns or string dot localized string with format. Localize the string with format. Here it is at the end. We need to format the string. So I want to format a string that comes from 4 values. I want to say the original amount. Then I want to say the unit that the user wanted to convert from. Then I want to say the result, the equal. Then I want to say the result. Then I want to say the value, the unit that the user wanted to convert to. So I format that inside that string. Then here as arguments, I put the arguments that will be injected into that string format. So the first thing is the amount. So the amount is float. So I use %f. And I'm going to use 0.2 to say I just want 2 decimals, or maybe 3 decimals. %f Then I'm going to have a space and say the type, the unit. So I want to inject a string here. To inject a string, before I do that, so that in the argument, since I added a float, in the argument I need to say where this float will come from. So this float is going to come from amount as float. Right? So if I leave it like that, the string will be made out of one number coming from the memory that has the amount as float. Then I want to add to it the unit that the user converted from. Like I want to say 10 feet equal 120 inch. That's what I'm after. So I want to inject a string. To inject a string type, you use the at specifier, %at, and then in the argument we add a comma and specify where the second argument will come from. So the second argument is a string, and it will come from the variable that is defined as unit from. Then I want to say the actual equal. Then I want to put the result again as float, and then this will be my final result. Then I want to specify the unit that the user converted to, so I'm going to inject another string and add it as an argument here as unit 2. So now this function will take the string format specifier that I used, the 4 arguments that I provided, and construct a string dynamically based on the current values, and gives me back as a string that I assign to this memory called the result as a string. Then the last step is to put that result as a string as the text of the label result, equal result as a string. So this is the convert function. 6 steps: retrieve the amount from the text field, the unit that the user selected to convert from, the unit that the user selected to convert to, apply the 2-step conversion, format the result as a string, and then assign the result string to the label. So let's test it. Notice there's nothing here hard-coded. The conversions are not, factors are not hard-coded, the units are not hard-coded. So if you want to add any new unit, all what you need to do is to add them to the file. So let me add 10. Select feet at the unit to convert from. Select inch as the unit to convert to. Convert, and here is the result. 10 followed by feet equal 120 followed by inch. Something I forgot to do in the convert function, we need to dismiss the keyboard. So I'll go back here in the function and add a step number 7, dismiss the keyboard from the text field. The way to dismiss the keyboard, we do not own the keyboard. The keyboard is owned by the operating system. But the keyboard came when the text field needed to enter data. So what I need to do is to tell the operating system that the text field no longer need to be the responder to the user input. So if I type the text amount dot, there is a function called resignFirstResponder. resignFirstResponder. That function relinquish the status of the text field as a responder, which in return tells the operating system the text field no longer need the keyboard. So we try this again. So you click on the keyboard, and sometimes when you click in the simulator, the keyboard is not going to show up. Go to the hardware menu item and go to the keyboard. You can toggle the software keyboard or use the Command K. The Command K will toggle the keyboard and bring the keyboard if it doesn't show by itself. So I will say maybe I'll do the other one now. So 120 and say inches, and I want to convert inch to feet. Click the convert button and 120 inch equal 10 feet. Let's try kilometer, and here's the kilometer. So you see now when I went to kilometer and the amount is too big, the label got cut off. So I'm gonna change the size of the label and make it maybe 2 lines so it goes to the next line instead of staying here. So I'll go back to the storyboard, select my label, and in the utility area I'll make it 2 lines and give it make it the height larger. So let's try that again. So I went from kilometer to feet. So here it is. If I do kilometer to an inch, so now it's no longer cut off. Kilometer to meter and kilometer to mile. Here it is. Mile, meter to mile, and mile to mile. That's good. So now it is working here, and the conversion of the application is complete. And this concludes the required part of the project. The next iterations, 2 iterations, are optional or extra credit, where we want to make the conversion as soon as the user moves, makes a selection, so we don't have to click on the button again, and also as soon as the user hit the go button, so we don't have to hit go and then hit the convert again. And we'll do that in the next iteration.